Welcome everybody to another Peaceful Solution Character Education Teacher Certification course class. Please be seated for those of you who are in here. And for those of you online, a quick note is you can go to the top right corner if you're on Facebook and you can download any of the books actually, but particularly we are in the self-control unit. If I could get the overhead for a minute. We are in the self-control unit tonight. Which you can see there. All right. We'd like to thank everyone for being here, and hope also you can be here for the following classes coming up all through this book. It's one of the most important units in the Peaceful Solution program. Though none can be done without, they all work synergistically together to form great moral character within us. And keeping in mind that we'll also want to really focus on practicing the Peaceful Solution. As teachers, as students, whatever the case might be, we want to work at practicing the Peaceful Solution every day and being consistent in practicing the Peaceful Solution. And if we're having problems with it, we can always get with the teacher and talk to them and go from there. So, that being said, today we are in chapter 2, and we'll be starting on page, well, the class is going to start, page 33. We are going to do just a little quick review and then look at the lesson plan also, but we will be starting on page 34 is the page we'll be starting on. And we're going to start where William left off, and it's, the heading says, "Not just skin deep," okay? We're going to stop for a minute and go back here and take a look at the lesson plan. On lesson plan 2, page D, and it's procedure number 4. Now, it starts out that you'll want to inform students that in addition to affecting our interactions, remembering the interactions being with others and in everything that we do, emotions, which is what we're talking about in this chapter, emotions can also affect us physically and mentally. And remember, emotions, of course, they're highly influenced by influences. Emotions can really take you down or build you up, and that's part of the lesson coming forth. But we have to remember that it can do it physically and mentally. It's not just a mental thing. This can really have an effect on our bodies and our minds. All right. So it says to turn to page 34 through 40, but first I want to go back just a couple pages and let's take another look at what are emotions, okay, on page 30. Now William covered, William covered some pages there all the way up through the first paragraph in page 34. And he did a great job in really going into detail. I'm glad he did, and we can move on. But I do want to go back to make sure on page 30, what are emotions? We need to know what these are. So emotions are strong physical and mental responses. So they're responses, physical, mental, both, triggered by what we experience. Okay? By what we experience. I might say by what we have experienced also. Now, a trigger is something that starts a process. Emotions are triggered, so, triggered, boom, someone had to flip the switch, it's triggered by what we hear, see, smell, taste, touch, and think. Now, those things are influences. Triggers can affect what we feel almost instantaneously. And that's why we say sometimes, well, I just wasn't thinking. Well, you were thinking, okay? And just like it says right here, our brain processes millions of pieces of information per second. Emotions can occur without conscious thought and without a split second of the event that triggered them. So emotions can occur without conscious thought, even though we are thinking, our our brain is processing, and it is working. We're not just sitting still. For example, you see a truck speeding at you. You think it's going to hit you, and you feel afraid. Well, you don't have to stop and consider whether you're afraid. You know it right away. And immediately, you'll be going into action. You will automatically experience the emotion of fear because your senses have made you aware that your life is in danger. Other feelings might not be so automatic or as easily identified as fear. These feelings could be triggered by memories. They might require conscious thought. For instance, you come home from school, you smell the cookies baking, and the smell of these baked cookies, it triggers your thoughts, and you begin to think about your grandma who taught you how to bake cookies. It takes you back to this era, this place in time, Because you have fond memories of your grandma, you feel glad. So remember, these emotions, they are so, so powerful. That particular one would leave you with a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling, about grandma and the cookies, and you might even be thinking of some of the other things great things that took place in your childhood, But, there's other things like the smell of burning rubber. It might take you back to a time when you were acting a fool driving a car and you got a ticket or thrown in jail or something like that. I mean, who knows? The smells, remember, back up there at the very top, it says emotions are triggered by what we hear. So it can be sounds, could be, a song or something, or someone said a certain word that is you might not hear all the time and it triggered something. What we see, that's huge. I mean, very huge. Smells, though. Smells, it could be that, like I just said, or some perfume or something like that, or some kind of chemical, might trigger something. I know I used to go in a lot of prisons teaching the peaceful solution. Several of us have. We would go in, and I know that the other men experienced the same things I did. There were a lot of smells in there, and, one of the things I remember that was almost in every prison that stood out was the smell of bleach. I would smell bleach. And so I don't know if it was used on the floors or walls or desks or where, but it was a distinct smell of bleach in almost every prison that I ever went into. So these smells, taste, touch, and also your thoughts themselves, they're all very, very powerful and can take you to another place and time, okay? Let's keep that in mind. And some of these emotions were gone over, the negative emotions, aggravation, anger. And William really covered the anger, a few of these, the last class. He had the display up there. But the anger being a strong feeling of displeasure, resentment, or hostility, but it's a strong feeling. It's a secondary thing that occurs when you don't agree with something. You don't agree with being embarrassed, or you don't agree with the fear that you feel, or you don't agree that you found out that someone stole something from you, or what have you. It's something like that is what would trigger it. And so you can look at all those. We're not going to go all through them tonight, but then on the next page, you've got positive emotions, which in feeling accepted, I think everyone likes to feel accepted, and it gives you a warm feeling. Emotions of the being accepted and affection and appreciation, all these things. These things are positive emotions. So I'm not going to go through the next page. William covered that quite well last class. And we're going to go ahead and turn to page 34 and get started now. Now, not just skin deep. Emotions, whether negative or positive, are powerful. They have the capacity to affect you both physically and mentally. So let's stop there for just a minute. Now, emotions, as we know, the emotion of anger, it's not necessarily bad. It's what you do with it after it hits that point. It's what your next step is. So something has triggered it, you're angry, you don't agree with something, and now, has anyone in here, you don't have to raise your hands, but I just want you to think about it. Have you ever experienced the next step of anger? If you were to take it in the wrong direction, the next step could be rage. Now, rage, if you've ever gone off on somebody and started yelling at them, calling them names, threatening to beat them up or something like that, you're there, you know? You're already there. You've had a physical and mental change, and you can't blame it on anybody but yourself. That's something else that we have to think about is that our actions, we can only, put the responsibility for our actions, we can only put them on ourselves. We can't say, well, he made me do it or she made me do it or something. It doesn't work that way. Okay. Physically, emotions can cause us to experience intense reactions within our bodies. For instance, some emotions can cause a flushed face, and you can see this on people sometimes too, especially if the person has really fair skin. You can see them get flushed, and you can really know, depending on the situation around, you can really know if the person is embarrassed by the conversation or what was just asked or so forth, which gives you some knowledge as to where that person stands. Of course, you can tell when someone is angry or they've gone to the point of rage. So like when you're embarrassed, the faster breathing is when you're angry, the butterflies in the stomach and goosebumps on the skin, like when you're nervous or afraid. We've all experienced these things at one point or time. And as hard as it may seem to believe or understand, these things are controllable. I know they might not seem that they're controllable, but just like when you're nervous or afraid, with practicing the peaceful solution on a steady basis and learning to control your emotions, you can get to a point where you don't as readily go into that area of getting that the goosebumps or the what they call butterflies in the stomach, being nervous and anxious and so forth. Let me read this next paragraph and talk about it, and then I want to go back to something. But mentally, emotions can result in feeling energized or worn out. All right? Now that's important to know. If you're in a joyful, accepted mode, your emotions are flowing positively and everything, it's going to energize you. You'll feel like you can do anything. You could work some long hours to finish a project and so forth. But if you're working on a project you don't really like, and your emotions are affected by your thoughts and everything, why am I even doing this? Why do I have to do this? They're making me do this thing, and I really don't want to. You're gonna feel very worn out by the time the day is over with. And again, you can control that situation. Now, once you're in that worn out mode, it is hard to get it back and get energized. But interestingly enough, if you're in an energized mode, if you're not careful, you could get in that worn out kind of depressed mode. And we'll talk more about that in just a minute. But mentally, emotions can result in feeling energized or worn out, satisfied or discouraged, motivated or depressed. And if not managed appropriately, some emotions can result in serious physical and mental illnesses. I want to look at a word here real quick. And I saved it here. I'm going to read it. I've got it right here on my phone, but that word depression, here's one of the examples of depression, or the symptoms. One of the symptoms must be for depression is a depressed mood or loss of interest. Get this, loss of interest or pleasure in almost all activities. You just don't care anymore. You don't care if you eat. You don't care if you if you know, go to an appointment that you've got that you really need to go to. You don't care if they're coming to kick you out of your house, or you just don't care. It's kind of like you're like, whatever, I just want to sit here and die. I mean, that's kind of how it can get. And I'm sure there's several of us in this room that have had that feeling before, that depression. I know I have. It's been a long time. Ever since I've started practicing the peaceful solution, I can't say that I've ever had what I would call really depression. I would say that I've been displeased sometimes with some things and so forth, like normal everyday business. It's just like the anger. You're going to get angry from time to time because you're going to disagree with the way things are going sometimes. But you can be positive, you can have conversation, and can work together to overcome these things rather than flying off the handle and going into rage, I'd like to remember, I don't know if you've got your character unit with you. If you do, you can go back to page 60. Page 60 in the character unit is about influences and, of course, how the values play an important part in this, but in character, but we're talking specifically about influences. They're all around us. And in the first paragraph, it says you must be aware of how influences affect the things that are important to you. An influence is something or someone that has the ability to affect your attitude, your way of thinking, your way of feeling and behaving. So it covers all those things, and that's what we're talking about right now. We're talking about the way we feel with the emotions and the way that we behave with our actions. So we have to remember about these influences. And remember, in our first we read a moment ago that everything you see, hear, smell, etc. Let's see. Whether you realize it or not, you are constantly being bombarded with influences. Everything you hear, experience, and see, as well as every interaction and every conversation that you're part of, they all have the potential to change the way you think and feel about the things that you value. All right? So we've got to remember about these influences. And on the next page, on page 61, there's a few things on here. It says, test your knowledge about influences. It says, which of the following are influences? And it's got a long list. And they're all influences. Jobs, community, advertisements, designers, books, songs, commercials, alcohol, school, food, sports, business, animals, drugs, styles, environment, movies, teachers, peers, magazines, the internet, odors, video games, media, musicians and singers, religious leaders, movie actors, and TV, family, billboard, colors, politicians, friends, and you could go on and on. All of these things are influences. And if you think about those peers for a minute, we can turn over a few pages. Turn over a few pages to page 70. And this is one of the things that can have an extreme effect on your emotions, is peers. Peer power, page 70. If you look down to about the third sentence, it says, having friends is great, but friends can also influence each other in negative ways. And we're talking a little bit about positive and negative influence here. Mostly negative right there, but here's the problem. If your friends accentuate the negative and not the positive traits in their character and encourage you to do the same, they're influencing you in a negative way. That's friends, co-workers, family members, everybody that you're around. You've got to keep that in mind and really be careful about what you allow yourself to listen to. It's called negative peer pressure, and it comes in all kinds of different forms, okay? Just like you to keep that in mind, because these things, influences, peer pressure, these things have an effect on our emotions and how we end up feeling and acting, okay? All right, so let's move on down. Emotions can really wear you down. All right, emotions such as anger. It's just like Con Benjamin said in the last class. He covered it quite well. It's a secondary emotion. Don't let it go to the next step of negatively, of rage. And then we've got anxiety. That's another word right there that we might want to look at. I've got it here on my phone. And you can see it right here if we can get the overhead. Okay, so anxiety. A feeling of worry. Sorry about that. A feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease. It's really hard to see right there, but a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. On down, it's talking about psychiatry, anxiety being a nervous disorder characterized by a state of excessive uneasiness and apprehension. And it actually can drive people to have what they call panic attacks. Now, if you've ever had one of these things, it's kind of a scary deal because you'll think you're having a heart attack. In fact, I would think the first time anybody ever has one of those things they call a panic attack, I'm sure they did think they were having a heart attack, because it attacks right there, and you're like, what's going on? So you don't want to get to that point by any means. Now, the emotions such as anger, anxiety, fear, guilt, and jealousy can cause stress or tension to build in our minds and bodies. Think of it like this. Your body's a complex structure composed of organs and systems that perform various functions. And I'll tell you, these things have to work just perfectly together. Everything must be balanced. Again, synergistic. Everything working together. Work together precisely for you to function at your very best. Yeah, if something's not working properly, it doesn't mean that you're just going to die right there. It just means that you're going to have some misfunction in your body. I think William called it dis-ease. You're not going to have ease in your body. You could have, everybody says disease, but he broke it down into dis-ease, So that's something important to remember. If everything is not balanced and working precisely, you can't possibly function at your very best. Your mind must be healthy in order for your body to function well, and your body must be healthy in order for your mind to function well. Let's stop there for just a second, and let's see. I'd like to go actually page 1. Page 1 in our self-control book. Page 1 in our self-control book. It's the introduction. And an important thing is said here. How you think about yourself and others, how you handle emotions, and whether or not you study, of course this book was initially created for school grade, but they all hinge on your ability to get this, to practice self-control. Now, the thing that's so important about this right here, if you go back to page 34 and you look at that word stress. Page 1 talks about your ability to practice self-control, and how you handle yourself hinges upon your ability to practice it. And what's important about this is practicing self-control constantly practicing self-control is going to train you to be able to handle the stressful situation. See, when everything's going real smooth and you're just joyful and everything's going your way and it's a beautiful day outside and everything, you can handle just about anything until some peer pressure comes along, or some negative influences come along, or you're put in a very pressurized, stressful situation. You're just told it's almost the end of the day, and you're just told you haven't met a deadline. You're working on a project, and you find out you don't have everything that's ready, or that you need to finish the project, but it has to be done. There's many things that come our way that are immediate, that we didn't count on. You're with a group of people, and and someone pulls out some drugs or some paraphernalia like that, and everyone's partaking of it, and now the stress is on for you to stand up against it. Someone says something, a racial or sexual joke or something, and everyone's laughing at it. What are you going to do? You're going to laugh at it, or are you going to stand up and tell them they need to stop? So the stress is on, right? The pressure's on. And when you practice the peaceful solution, it really shows under stress. That's when it shows up. Because what you do and what people see you do, it shows. It shows how you handle those situations. And it shows you've been practicing, respect. It shows you've been practicing self-control. It shows you've been practicing acceptance, all these things, and taking responsibility. So you're practicing the entire program, and it shows. So on page 35 at the top, let us compare how our bodies function with the process of following a recipe to bake a cake. Now this same example, or close to it, was used when talking about also the difference between a mistake or a bad choice, okay? So too much of one ingredient and not enough of another will yield poor results when baking a cake. You got to have balanced ingredients. So in the same manner, certain stress within the body over a long period of time is like not following the recipe for the cake and putting in 2 cups of salt and only a teaspoon of sugar. Well, everybody's going to know it too. When they take a bite of that cake, they're going to be like, whoa, what did this person do? So unmanaged stress has the ability to negatively affect the way the various systems and organs function, causing the body to become unbalanced in much the same way as the cake that was cooked indirectly, with the wrong ingredients. It's unbalanced. It doesn't work. It's not functioning to the best of the ability. You couldn't function. Stress affects physical organs like the heart and the stomach, and can lead to ailments such as high blood pressure, stomach ulcers, and headaches. Now, some of these things mentioned, there's other things that go along with it to cause that, just like we know stomach ulcers can be caused by, different bugs in your stomach, so to speak, as well as headaches, as well as high blood pressure, and so forth. But stress definitely has an effect on how we handle things and how our body handles things. Stress can affect the immune system. The immune system keeps us healthy by fighting off germs and dis-ease, as William said. Reports indicate that mental stress can weaken the immune system, leaving us susceptible to all sorts of ailments. I don't have any of those articles with me tonight, but you could go on any, what they call a health website and look up a lot of this, in that the immune system is affected by these things, by the wrong food, by the wrong drink, by stress, and by your lifestyle. So it leaves us susceptible to all sorts of ailments such as respiratory infections, heart disease, and cancer. Stress also hastens the aging process and is the leading cause of suicide. So people that have not learned how to handle the stress in situations, people who have entered into a stressful situation or a situation in which the pressure is on for them to do a certain thing, and they can't handle it. They haven't learned, of course, through the peaceful solution, they haven't learned on how to handle that stressful situation or handle that pressure and how to stand up against the negative. And they don't know how to handle it, and they go home and they're depressed and not eating and not caring about what they're doing, and it can lead to suicide. This is why it's so important to practice the peaceful solution. Just like we talked about on the previous page, that stress and the tension that builds in our minds and bodies. And to not get caught up in all that depression, it is a pity party, but if you say that to someone who's depressed, they're like, you don't even know what you're talking about. Because when you're depressed, real depression, it's like as far as you're concerned, nobody knows what you're going through. But there are people that do know because they've been there. And yeah, it's a tough situation. So to keep out of that depressed mode, you need to practice constantly this peaceful solution, And really, if you guard what goes into your mind and guard the situations you get involved in and learn how to handle those pressurized, stressful situations, you'll be much better off, and you'll be able to say, one day that, wow, I can't remember the last time I was depressed. I mean, really depressed. I'm not talking about being a little sad about something or something's not going your way. I'm talking about real depression where you're not eating, not getting up, not going out, So, all right, we have a saying down there at the bottom, or a warning. Daily hassles are hazardous. The University of Michigan sociologist, Lois Verbrugge, who followed the daily lives of 589 men and women, I don't know for how long, but found that daily irritations triggered bad moods, which in turn were followed by physical troubles. So, keeping all that in mind, let's go back and see where we are on our lesson plan. We want to make sure we stay on top of that. Procedure number 4. So it said, have students turn to pages 34 through 40 to the sections entitled Not Just Skin Deep, Emotions Can Really Wear You Down, Tips for Overcoming Stress, Emotions Can Really Build You Up, or we'll be talking about the positive emotions, and Emotions Can Really Be Confusing. I would say that that's a true statement right there for sure. And then it says to have students complete each of the accompanying exercises, which if you're in the right environment, in the small classroom environment, that's a wonderful thing to do, and you have that one-on-one interaction with your students. In this type of setting, it's not quite as simple to do, but we can, take a moment for thought. Allow as many students as time permits to share. Okay, we won't be doing that tonight, but stress that an important aspect of living a healthy life, physically, mentally, and emotionally, is to learn how to manage and control emotions. And that's what we've been talking about for the entirety of this class so far, is handling those emotions. Let's go on over to page 36. And I encourage you to do this when you get an opportunity. It's great to do, to write down the things so you can see, you can actually look at it yourself, not just thinking about it, but actually write it down. It's not as easily, you can't change your mind as quickly if it's written down right there to stare you in the face. So think of a situation in your life where you have experienced stress. Okay, everybody thinking about it? Think about a time you've experienced stress. I can guarantee you there's a conference that I go to here in about a month on a yearly basis. And man, I'll tell you what, sometime between a month and 2 weeks before that conference begins, I can tell the pressure's on. I can tell there's a little bit of stress, And of course, over the years, again, we learn how to manage it, just like we talked about before, learning how to manage the stress, learn how to manage the pressure, learn how to get the job done and take responsibility and so forth. So, well, for instance, you come to class, find out there's going to be a test, and you didn't study for it, or you were just told to come to the front of the class to read your book report. Did your heart rate increase? Did your palms get sweaty? Or whatever the situation was you were thinking about, the stressful situation, the pressure-filled situation. Everybody could think about that and think about what you remember about it. Did you get sick at your stomach? Some people, I know somebody who just can't bear to do any kind of interview on camera, and they just get really sick to the point where they could vomit. They get so sick at their stomach. And that's our emotions letting it take us to that point. And so a lot of times when these situations are occurring and we're trying to figure out the right thing to do, one of the things that always comes to mind, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank William for bringing this up here, but you can stop, use the STOP acronym, which we've been learning in the self-control unit also. You can stop and think and consider your options, and then, of course, proceed with the right choice. Now, again, just like we talked about sometimes, just like in the example given of the fear of a truck fixing to run you over, there's not really a lot of time that goes into conscious thought. It's more of a knee-jerk action that you've learned because of the fear, and you've processed the information so quickly because you see the truck there and you know if you don't get out of the way, something bad is going to occur, right? So, but to have, in most situations, to be able to stop and think and then consider those options. You know, what really can you do? What's the best thing? And sometimes you might have to pause a little bit and even tell the person you're dealing with, if there's a person involved, you might have to tell them, hey, you know, stay with me here a little bit, but give me a little bit of time. And or if it's a situation you're thinking about what to do, you could also call someone very close to you that you trust their counsel, you know, their advice, and get advice on it before you make a decision on what to do. That's the proper way to do it. Of course, if you're practicing the peaceful solution like we talked about earlier, if you're practicing it consistently, these things are going to come to you much faster. You won't have to really, you know, won't have to worry about it too much, not get too stressed out. Okay, so I hope everybody had an opportunity to think about a stressful situation in their life, and if their palms got sweaty, if they felt like puking, or if they got upset, or what the situation was. All right, let's go on over to page 37. Now, here's a few things that you can do to help the stress a little bit. You know, some of them I've tried, really about all of them. Let's look at the first one. Now, laughing 10 times a day. I looked this up earlier. I can't really read all the benefits of it, but laughing at least 10 times a day has many benefits. Not only does laughter put other people at ease that are around you, unless you're, you know, laughing hysterically like a clown or something, that might put people at dis-ease. But it'll usually put people at ease, and it makes you a little more approachable, you know, for people who want to know a little more about what you have to say. Laughter also helps the stress go away. You know, it puts you in a little bit lighter mood. It's kind of a natural thing. I know a lot has been said about smiling rather than frowning. It takes a lot more energy to frown than it takes to smile. And if we can remember that, it can really help your general attitude, your general sense of well-being. And then you can be an influence to others on how their emotions, how they let their emotions affect them. You can be a positive influence. Drinking more water. Well, they even say laughter can help you, your health, as far as, I know people in a hospital, I've heard of tests they did in a hospital in a cancer ward where they played, you know, funny stuff all the time. People were laughing and all, and the ones that had the humorous things to look at and think about and laugh about did quite better than the ones that were not doing that. Drinking more water, that's a big deal. Now, can any of us really say today that we drank as much water as we probably should have? I know I got a big X on that one, because it's something you have to think about doing. It's a little bit easier in the summertime when you're, you know, very thirsty, you've been working and so forth, you know, and you're going to run for some water because your mouth is dry and all that. But, you know, in the wintertime or some of the milder times of the year, you've got to push yourself to drink the water, you know. You got to make yourself do it, because stress dehydrates the body. This is not only about the stress, though. If your body is not hydrated properly, then the stress is going to affect you worse. So it has a dual-fold effect here. Drinking more water. Stress dehydrates the body, but drinking more water, hydrating the body, helps reduce the stress. So, keep that in mind, because and a lot of our ailments that we have, I might add here, are due to the lack of water. You can be having and water is one of the quickest things to see a healing effect out of. What I mean is it's instantaneous a lot of times. If you're thirsty and you take a drink of water, what occurs? You're like immediately, wow, I needed that, If you have an ache, what's the matter with me here? And you got some sharp pain here, and you think about it and you say, I haven't drank enough water today. Drink that water. It can go away immediately. I mean, try it. If you've got some pains that are really affecting you, go drink some water. If this class is creating a pain for you, well, drink some water. It won't be as much stress. You can take this positive information and use it to do away with your stress. Maintaining a positive attitude. Now, maintaining a positive attitude and being overly optimistic aren't really the same thing. You can maintain a positive attitude about everything that you're doing. You can maintain a positive attitude even if you have a serious, stressful financial situation. You can have a positive attitude about that, You can look at your house or your tent or your dwelling and think to yourself, man, this place is ragged and run down, and what in the world am I doing in this place, That's negative. Or you can think, man, I sure am thankful to have some place to stay, because there's a lot of people, especially in this day and time, in war-torn countries that have no place to stay. They have no hope. They have some hope, and it's a peaceful solution, but they don't know about it yet. So they haven't actually experienced that hope yet. But maintain that positive attitude. I know occasionally a person I know gets a little overly optimistic when they're thinking about certain things that they can do in a day's time, and they're like, yeah, okay, let's go do that, and at 2:00, and along the way they really didn't realize that the other thing they had already committed to, it wasn't going to be done at 2:00. It was going to probably be done closer to 3. But they were a little bit overly optimistic in their thinking about it. So we don't want to go quite to that point, but we do want to be optimistic, and we do want to have a positive attitude. Also, identifying the feeling associated with the stress and dissolve it. Deal with it. Just deal with it, man. One of the things that we want to try to do every time is, if we have a problem with somebody, if somebody has said something that we were a little bit angry about and disagreed with, rather than holding a grudge and letting that build and build and build, we need to go settle it right away. I mean, I don't mean go and punch him out. That doesn't settle anything. You need to go settle it. Sit down and talk with the person if you possibly can. If there's no talking to the individual, then talk to your trusted person that you trust their advice and their counsel, and talk to them and see what can be done about it. Might be they know the person too and can go talk to them on your behalf. So always think about dealing with it, and that gets rid of a lot of stress. Also, by having a list of things that you need to do in a day's time and marking those things off as you get them done, I'll tell you what, that helps with the stress too, because you can see you're getting something done. In fact, just writing the things down helps with the stress level, because you can kind of plan your time and not be overly optimistic on some of the things that you want to accomplish. Focus on the here and now. We can know that we have things to do, things that are coming up, but we don't need to get overwhelmed with something that's going to be taking place, or we think is going to be taking place in a year or 8 months or whatever the case might be. You don't have to get overwhelmed with it. You need to focus on now too. Yes, be aware of the situation, but focus on the here and now, because you can do something about it right away. And don't focus on the past for sure, because there's really nothing you can do about it. It's already gone, man. It's history. But you can take care of the here and now, and you can change your life. Massage the back of your neck. Okay. You're feeling kind of stiff back there and everything? Massage the back of your neck. It does help, especially if you're drinking enough water. All those things go together. Take some deep breaths through your nose, letting them out slowly through your mouth. One of the things that I understand that breathing through your nose does is it helps increase the intake of nitric acid, I believe it's called, and that has a great effect on your body and your mental well-being. And so that is something that you really you can get in other ways, but breathing through your mouth and just, you're really not going to get it. At the time you need it the most, you're really not going to get it. So take time to stop and breathe through your nose. That's what it was made for, actually, right? So, and then think of all the things that you're thankful for. You know, we all have things to be thankful for. Even those in the war-torn countries that I mentioned before, even they have things to be thankful for. They're alive, some. I mean, if they're not going to even be worrying about whether to be thankful or not. So, you know, everyone can find something to be thankful for. If they have some water to drink, they can be thankful for that. And I'm not trying to be. I know, you know, someone could be watching out there or here and think, well, what do you know about it? You know, you're sitting up there. You know, you got a shirt and tie on, and you know, you probably had a glass of water before you came into place. We're in shelter right now. Well, I know a little bit about it, and I know a lot of people in this room know a little bit about it also. You know, that's the great thing about the Peaceful Solution. When I meet the teachers of the Peaceful Solution, and when I meet the students of the Peaceful Solution, man, everybody has stories. And everybody's stories are a little bit different, though some of them are similar. And, you know, it's great to actually talk to one another and hear another story and find out what they went through and how they came through it and how they managed to even hook up with the Peaceful Solution to be learning this great program and wanting to change their life. You know, so think of the things that you're thankful for. Don't think of the things that you're not thankful for. Nobody wants to be around a complainer. A complainer is that, you know, we can go back to the influences on page 60 in the character manual and know that influences are all around us. And an influence is something or someone that has the ability to affect your attitude, way of thinking, feeling, and behaving. If you got someone complaining, man, it can take your attitude down if you let it. Remember, it has the ability to do it. You don't have to let it, but it can. And so you're using some energy to fight that, to not let it go there, you know. And so it's better to be positive about things. You know, if you're kind of prone to complaining about things, hey, write down the positive things in your life and look at it before you step out of the house, you know. Think of all the things you're thankful for. Count to 10 and think of how someone you respect would handle the situation. Well, that goes back to this right here. Count to 10, you know. Stop, think, you know, stop, count to 10 or longer. Think about your options and proceed with the right choice. Think of how someone you respect would handle the situation. Everybody has somebody that they truly respect and honor and really consider their advice to be truthful and just totally true and are willing to do what they say. Everybody has someone like that. Everybody does. They might not be, you know, right here sitting next to you each and every day, but I bet all of us could pick up a phone, all of us that have a phone, or get someone else to call on the phone, and we could, you know, if that allow us to use their phone to talk to that trusted individual in a serious enough situation. I think just about anybody would. But we all have the ability to check with someone we respect on how they would handle the situation. I know everyone sitting here sure does, and I know you out there watching do too. Because you wouldn't be watching this right now if you didn't, okay? All right, so down at the very bottom, everyone experiences stress, and the key is to take action to reduce your stress. Well, don't wait till the stress comes to say, I need to do something about this. Start in advance. Start in advance by practicing the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, practicing it consistently in your life so that when the stress comes, you know how to handle it. It's kind of like anything in your life you're trying to change. I knew a guy once who was trying to, I knew a bunch of people that were trying not to shake hands during the COVID when it came along, but I knew a guy before that he was really trying not to shake hands with people because he already knew and was quite aware of how diseases, and how many things are passed between people just by shaking their hand. Because, some people don't even wash their hands after going to the bathroom and so forth, So it took work. It took constant effort to not do the thing that everybody expected, the expected thing, and to not shake hands. And to deal with the discomfort or embarrassment of not shaking hands when somebody stuck their hand out and you could tell they were kind of, he doesn't want to shake my hand, So it took a lot to deal with that for the man. But he did it and got used to doing it. And so once he was used to doing it, it was a no-brainer. It was very easy for him to do. I remember him telling me that one of the ways he found to keep from shaking hands, and I'll tell you, even in this time right now, even though the masks are off for the most part, and people are, going in and mingling amongst each other and everything, and I see a lot of handshaking and everything going on, but people need to be aware that handshaking could be a problem for them in the future, because it doesn't stop with COVID. There's all kinds of other things that are passed by shaking the hand. But anyway, it takes some effort to do. And he said one of the things that he did was he always made sure he had, if he was going in and he was going to be around people, he always made sure he had like a book in his hand, or a couple books in his hand, or a pen in one hand, a book in the other, or one hand in his pocket and a book here, or that he, if someone was come up to him, he thought the handshake deal was coming, he might go cough in his hand. Well, and that would tend to make the people not even want to put their hand out there and shake and so forth. Of course, he did tell me of one time when a man saw him, sneeze in his hand. The man said, "No, that's all right." He still held his hand out there to shake his hand. So there are people out there that have no thought about it. All right, didn't mean to get too far off into that, but just be aware. It's all part of self-control, that too. We've got a few more minutes. Let me get started here on page 38, and we'll just kind of give a real quick overview there, and I think Catan will be the next teacher, and he can go into detail on this. Okay, emotions can really build you up. Now, see, this is going to be talking about the positive emotions and the positive experience and everything that come with that. Just briefly, it says, now that you have evaluated the effects of negative emotions and the stress they cause, let's analyze the effects of positive emotions. For example, the feeling of being appreciated can lower stress and have a beneficial effect on both your mind and body. All right, so yes, we've talked about that a little bit already. Like I said, he'll go into detail on that, but then there'll be an opportunity for you to think about a positive experience that you had where the positive emotions came forth and how you felt when that took place. Then as we move along through the chapter, he'll be covering, or someone will, one of the next teachers, will be covering emotions can really be confusing, because there are some emotions that kind of, when they take place, they can be right there on the line, and you can feel joyful or sad almost at the same time, So there's some that you'll have to probably get in touch with your trusted advisor again when you have a confusing emotion, that you can get some help on clarifying it, on working it out. And then responding. We're gonna stop right there, but it's all in the way you respond. We're going to go into that. I think let's see, somebody was a little bit of a spoiler on one of the last classes, so I might as well go ahead and say it too. But, even controlling your positive emotions so that you don't hear that you won some money and, waving your hands around and you knock off an expensive jar or something. So, anyway, with that in mind and the great things coming forth and talking about the positive emotions and all, we'll go ahead and close class for tonight. Keep in mind that the next class is going to be on 3/20/22. That's on Sunday afternoon at 5:30. And we look forward to that. I believe Katan will be the teacher, and we'll go from there. Look forward to seeing all of you again, and thank you for coming tonight.